Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Middara promo Kickstarter Let's Paint series. Today we're painting the Viscera Aramid Eliphie. There are 2 figures to paint here, so we are just diving right in. I started with a zenithal highlight of gray or black base and gray top, and then I am adding a base coat of Gauss Blaster Green from Citadel. The Viscera Aramid are in the middle between light blue and light green, kind of like a light turquoise, and I'm trying to replicate that by starting with a kind of a lighter green base and then adding some light blues on top of that. Digging into what little lore there is of the Aramids, it definitely strikes them as an interesting fantasy race you don't normally see. They hail from the ghastly domain Acalide, where they give these organs that they harvest to their elders. Those elders then use those organs in rituals for bountiful harvests or to make decisions. It's definitely interesting, to say the least. Viscera Aramids are Aramids who strike out to other domains, other planes, and in this case into Middara, to collect these exotic organs for their overseers or for their seers. For our next layer, we're adding Verdigris from Vallejo. This is a lightish blue pigmented paint that will be giving the Aramid her lightish blue base color. Follow me on my Instagram at Biggie Hobbies to see pictures of this and other completed figures, as well as other additional content. Working with the Verdigris paint was definitely a challenge here. I learned some stuff for my future painting uses with it. But it comes out of the bottle very thick and kind of chalky. It definitely needs more thinning than I do in this video. Maybe even with like a stabilizer or some other kind of medium that isn't just water. But it definitely goes on very obtusely. And you probably will need 3 to 4, maybe even 5 coats of it just to get a nice color buildup. Next up, we're putting a base layer of Khorne Red from Citadel Paints on the bag. This bag is enchanted, and it's made out of flesh stitched together for the Viscera Aramids to store all the different viscera that they get from whatever planes they happen to visit. The Viscera Aramid that players can summon with their summoning discipline is named Eliphie. She is a Aramid who was not chosen by the elders to become a Viscera Aramid, but instead was given a special mission which is not clarified in her backstory. I hope we'll see more of what this special mission entails and how she became a Viscera Aramid, because by the time you can summon her, she is one. For the most part, painting this bag is pretty simple, but it does wrap around her shoulder and kind of over her chest a bit, and it kind of narrows very, very closely and kind of goes underneath. It's definitely a little bit of a challenge to make sure you get every single part of this bag covered without kind of bleeding into her skin or getting some excess paint off. But regardless, it is very simple to go back and just paint over any mistakes you make, especially at these early layers. So it's okay to make mistakes. Moving on to her hair, which I'm painting a nice magic blue from Vallejo. This is a nice base color that will serve us well when we move to some darker hues and some lighter hues. Is it just me, or does her hair kind of resemble feathers on a bird's wing? I don't know, just when I first saw her, I kind of pictured like an avian race. But to me, it looks like feathers and the bird's wings are kind of angled backwards. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think it looks like? We're going back to the bag next with some red tone wash from the Army Painter. This will darken this down to make it resemble more like dried flesh. Moving back to the hair, I'm adding Drakenhof Nightshade from Citadel. This will get into the crevices and add some more detail to the hair. Moving over to the bases, I'm using Daemonette Hide from Citadel Paints. This is a light purple color that kind of goes well with the light blue of the skin. I need to get better with painting bases. I always go for these just kind of flat color, or if I try to add a little bit of texture or something to it. And they look fine, but maybe like a magic circle or something more tied into the art from the art book. I'm highlighting the skin with Winter Wolf Pelt from WizKids, the D&D brand of paint. This should get a little bit of contrast between the green Verdigris and now the kind of lightish blue Winter Wolf Pelt to add a little more depth to the skin. I have enjoyed using the D&D WizKids brand of paint on my models. They offer slightly different colors that just kind of pop, and since they're D&D branded, they go very well in a fantasy setting. And the only downside being really that they come in smaller bottles. They are cheaper, so it's a trade-off there. Bringing the skin back full circle, I'm going back with dry brushing Gauss Blaster Green on. This is to bring texture to it by going back to the original base color. So now I have light green, light blue, even lighter light blue, back to green. Apologies for the blurry shot here. My autofocus was not liking me when I was doing this particular step. And this is all the footage I have of me dry brushing on this layer. So, got to work with what I have. And I'm working on the autofocus issue in the future. Hopefully I get a better handle on that. As for the dry brushing here, at this point I wished I would have done this before I painted the bag and the hair, just so that I didn't have to go back and do some touch up here and there. But it worked out pretty fine. I didn't really get too much of it on the bag or the hair, so there was only a little bit of going back and having to fix it, especially around like the part over her shoulder. That was the main thing I had to touch up again. Sticking on the dry brush train, I am dry brushing on Wild Rider Red from Citadel Paints. This is to add more contrast between the dark recesses where I added the wash and now the lighter light part of the top. It also doubles as kind of like a like a bloody effect. So that you still have like the darker red and the lighter red of old and new, dried and new blood. So it looks pretty nice. I think the effect comes off pretty well. And again, apologies for the autofocus. My autofocus did not like my dry brushing for some reason this time. Next up, we're painting her only clothes, which are little feathers around her waist, which we're painting Ulthuan gray from Citadel Paints. These feathers are grayish white, and they circle around from her hips all the way to in the lower part of her back. The angles here are very difficult to get these feathers because the bag's in the way and her hand's in the way, and it's just very hard to get to some parts of it. So I'm spinning the model around a lot here, trying to find like the best way into a little tiny spot to try to get maybe one more feather. So I'm going back and forth and back and forth. Definitely was a little bit of a struggle, and it's hard to get any other detail in there. I would like to have maybe a little more contrast between a light white and a light gray, but it was just hard enough getting even a little bit of paint in these little feathers. The Viscera Aramid's weapon is kind of impractical, but also very practical at the same time. As a weapon in combat, it's just a scalpel, so you're not going to be doing too much damage with that. But you couple that with the mission, the whole point of collecting organs and whatnot, it works pretty well. I kind of feel like maybe, though, she should have some other kind of weapon. She does have gore shot, so blood magic, but other than that, I mean, if something comes up close to her, she just has a little tiny scalpel. I don't know what you're going to do with that. Next up, we're painting some details on the bag itself with Spaceship exterior from the Army Painter. These are like teeth and kind of like a skull a bit, and they're hard to make out, especially with the red kind of fleshiness of the bag. But if you look closely enough, you can see the two teeth and then the skull. I added a little bit of a stitching effect on the side of the bag, which is the tip of my brush, to show off that this is a stitched together handmade bag of flesh. These bags are really starting to come together now that we have the grayish white details on them. They go contrast very well with the darkness of the bag. We're hitting the hair again with some Kantor blue dry brushed on from Citadel Paints. This is to darken up the hair, as the art has the hair being both light and dark at the same time. So I wanted to try to replicate that effect by alternating light and dark. Some of the recesses are a little bit too dark, so I try to lighten up some of those by dry brushing on another layer to not fully wipe out the wash, but to kind of lessen the effect of it a bit. Sticking with the Kantor blue, we are adding the markings or the tattoos to the Viscera Aramid skin. These start at the feet. They wrap up the legs. They go up the stomach, over the shoulders, down the back, up the arms. They're very distinctive. They add a contrast between the light skin and then this dark marking that kind of wraps the whole body. And it also matches the same color as the hair. So it kind of brings the model together by having the same color in two different places. These markings were pretty fun to paint on. Trying to visualize how it wraps up the leg, making sure that all the lines kind of match up together. Trying to connect the lines as they go up and down. Maybe I want to start at the arm, kind of spin it around, and then go down the back. But in this case, I went up the leg, up the stomach, over the shoulder, kind of avoiding the bag, and then kind of having fun with it too. These are meant to be, even in real life, they're hand painted, so they're meant to be personal, meant to be, not uniform. So I don't need to make sure both these figures match in any way, really, other than the general theme of it. While painting this model, I had to go over these lines a few times. I would find places where it wouldn't make sense, where it was connecting or it wasn't connected properly, or it looked awkward or whatnot. Definitely a evolving kind of process. There wasn't really one way for me to do it easily. Looking at the lore again, I find it funny that these Aramid are able to become doctors or like battlefield medics or whatnot, as their whole mission is to get organs for their seers. And you would think saving lives would be counterintuitive to that whole mission. They would want the organs from the creatures or the beings or whatnot, and by saving them, they're not collecting their bounty that they're looking for. While I was painting these markings, I was curious as to what these markings mean. There's not a lot of lore around them, so it's hard to exactly tell, but I could see these being marks of being a Viscera Aramid, as being one allows you to enjoy wealth and high social status, as you are bringing a great boon onto the seers of the tribe and the tribe itself. So this could be a marking or markings to show that you are doing the tribe a good favor, good deed. It could also be just, something like a birthmark, like how they're born. We don't know. I hope to see more in the future as to this race and maybe some more of their backstory. Let's get a base coat now on the weapon. We're using Mechanicus Standard Gray on it, on her scalpel. It's a very small weapon. There's not a lot here to paint. There's just a two-sided kind of mini dagger in her hand. And yep, that is a heart. And we are painting it Khorne Red from Citadel. In her splash art, she's holding the heart high and blood's dripping down her arm as if like a freshly harvested organ. So we're starting this off with just getting red kind of on the heart, and then we'll do the bloody effect going down her arm in a bit. One of the more striking features of the Viscera Aramid are their black scleras, which we are using a flat black from Vallejo to paint. Normally the way I like to paint eyes is I like to make a black line across and then do the iris and then paint around with the color of the face. In this case, the eyes were so narrow, I just went with one black strip, and then I'll be doing the iris in just one more strip. Moving back to the weapon, we're using titanium silver from Tamiya, thinned with Lamian medium from Citadel Paints. This gets the silver paint nice and thin, so it goes on very nicely on the weapon. I'm trying to build up as much of this thin silver color on these weapons as possible without trying to go too much and make it all globby. So if you see, I'm going over it a few times with this very thin silver paint, trying just to get a nice consistent line across. Back to the eyes, we're using flat red from Vallejo. This is just a little red dot in the black sclera. The eyes are too small for any more effect than that. The lips here are very simple, just Fulgrim pink from Citadel Paints. Just a little dot. I'll be going around with some of the skin color just to make it look a little bit nicer, but just a little pink dot and clean it up. Doing some touch up here with Winter Wolf Pelt, just in some of the areas where it looks like it's a little choppy or not as clear. I'm trying to just smooth it out. Also, I use this paint on the face as it's nice and light and allowed me to cover up any of the eyeball issues or any of the mouth issues. Going back to the hair with some Magic Blue from Vallejo. This is just touch up, kind of highlighting some of the edges, trying to get the hair to look very nice with the different shades on it. Every time I paint hair, I try to figure out a better way to do it or a better looking way to do it. In this case, I think I did okay. There's definitely things I would change about how I painted the hair here. Maybe a darker shade at first and then bring it up lighter. I was trying to go with light, dark, light, but dark, light, light maybe was a better option. But I still think it turned out pretty nice. It has nice contrast between the different shades, and it still kind of gives off the light, dark aspects to it. If you made it all this way, I'd like to thank you for watching. It was fun painting the Viscera Aramids and reading a little bit about their lore, but I'm always looking to do better. Anything you think I could change about how I paint or any new techniques I should look into, please let me know in the comments below. I'm always trying to learn better. I'm definitely trying to learn how to fix the autofocus here. A lot of my footage I had to cut because of autofocus issues, so I'm trying to work on that part of my presentation. But I enjoy painting. This is just a fun hobby for me. Yeah, I just like to thank you again for watching, and I'll be moving on to the big reveal at the end. And here it is. Here's the final two Viscera Aramid figures. This is the enemy nameless Viscera Aramid, doing the full 360 here. I think the bag effect looks pretty nice. The face looks pretty good. And Eliphie herself. Yeah. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.